Alright, boys, it's been a while since I did a Bleacher Report article, and it's actually every team's top 3 trade targets. Shout out to Zach. And because Bleacher Report always goes in alphabetical order, we always start with the Atlanta Hawks. We see the picture of Siakam. I've already given my take on the Siakam stuff. I just think the AJ Griffin, DeAndre Hunter, plus whatever picks Atlanta can move or is willing to move after the DeJounte trade, I just don't think that's enough for Siakam. I think the Raptors front office agrees. And after that, they've got Anunoby as well as Jeremy Grant. And I think it's safe to say that OG Anunoby is going to appear on this thing many times. And I think it's safe to say at this point that if the Raptors were ever going to move Anunoby, it would be for a lot, man, based on the rumors that they could have gotten multiple picks for him at the previous deadline. And so, with his player option coming up, which we imagine he'll decline, I think similar to what I said about Siakam, I think it's going to be the Raptors are either going to trade him for a return that they really like, or they are going to try to keep him on a new deal that is going to pay him very generously. But of course, if you take this to next offseason, then that becomes OG's decision of what he wants to do. And like I've already said, I would like to believe that Darko can juice up their offense more than it was last season, get more connectivity with these guys. At the same time, there is currently a lawsuit floating over the Raptors from the Knicks that has some accusations against Darko, so we'll just see with that whole thing. But I also want to talk about Jalen Johnson for a bit, because Hawks fans are very excited about Jalen Johnson moving forward. And I mean, there's things to be excited about. You know, he's a tall athlete who has already shown a willingness to set screens. And I think he's a good enough ball handler and passer to make plays off the roll. So that can be another element of their offense, right? The question with him is mostly the jump shot. Now we go to my Boston Celtics. Are we going with Dorian Finney-Smith? I think Finney-Smith is the exact type of guy the Celtics need right now. Just another wing who you can rely on to make shots and play defense. And I do think it would give him a little bit more lineup versatility where they could have like a wing player at the 4 spot. You can go like Porzingis at 5 or Time Lord or Horford at 5, whatever you want to do. Granted, they could do that right now anyway, but it gives you another guy to help out with that. The only problem with this for the Celtics is that they don't really have like a $7 or $8 million player who I think you would view as a trade asset like that. And they're definitely not going to move like Jordan Walsh, right? The other thing, too, is that a number of teams would love to have Finney-Smith as well, especially on his budget contract, including the Nets. Now, I do know that he struggled a bit with Brooklyn. I would bet that his three-pointer comes back around moving forward. All right, now we go to the Nets. We have a picture of Joel Embiid. What's this one going to be? Joel Embiid, Damian Lillard, or Trae Young? Okay, all due respect, I don't think any of these are going to happen for the Nets. I think with the Nets, the question is what this roster is going to look like potentially even by the end of the trade deadline, because I think it's safe to say McHale, Cam Johnson, and Claxton are your definite keepers, and I think Ben Simmons is in a spot where if he bounces back, then he's a keeper as well. And so then after that, between Dinwiddie, Royce O'Neal, Finney-Smith, potentially Cam Thomas, because his minutes were kind of weird even after his run of 40-point games. I mean, the Nets could keep any of these guys, but I think they're definitely going to get offers for them. All right, now we go to Charlotte. Why is there a picture of Brandon Ingram? What are you doing to me here? Brandon Ingram, Jonathan Kuminga are draft picks. I don't think any of these are going to happen. So I more so just want to talk about the Hornets. It's probably the most talented team that they've had in a minute. Well, some of that's going to be depending on how much Brandon Miller hits right away. But, if you want to keep it strictly to about trades just because of the article and stuff, Hayward's on the last year of his deal, and I'm sure they would love to get one healthy season from him. And, he's still good. He still can make shots. He can play off the ball. He can be a connective passer and all that. And he can still put in work on the ball. You're not going to be having him run your offense, but he can be a good fit with pretty much anybody. But he's also at $30 million, so you do have to put in a little bit of money. But I could picture somebody who's better than Charlotte giving them an offer for him. All right, now we got the Bulls. I don't think Mike Conley is going to get traded. Yeah, Mike Conley, Tyus Jones, Doug McDermott. So of these three, I think McDermott is probably the most possible. I mean, don't get me wrong. The Bulls would definitely love to get an upgraded point guard. Conley's not getting moved, and I don't think the Wizards would move Tyus Jones unless somebody came with an offer that was a little wow, you wanted Tyus Jones that bad. And so then it just becomes, the Bulls need dudes who make threes, but also will shoot a good amount of threes, Because you just go down the roster, and the only guy they really have who you could consider a gunslinger is Levine and Kobe White, depending on the day. And like I said in my Bulls video, that's not me saying DeRozan needs to shoot threes. DeRozan is a very efficient offensive player. He's got a 60 true shooting. DeRozan's fine. But they just need more three-point shooters. And while Javon Carter will help, he's not going to change their world, right? Now for the Cavaliers, we got Royce O'Neal. See, this is what I like. I like the niche stuff like this. Let's see, Royce O'Neal, Caleb Martin, Josh Green. I don't think Caleb Martin or Josh Green are going anywhere. Royce O'Neal, that's definitely a name I could see moving. Not that the Nets need to be shopping him, but hey, listen, if offers are going to be there, you got to listen, right? Okay, for Dallas, we have DeAndre Ayton, Miles Turner, and Clint Capella. Look, I don't think Ayton or Turner are getting traded. As far as Capella, I've talked about this. I just don't think Dallas has the stuff to really make an offer for Capella. Unless you want to try to imagine some 3-team trade that you can put on Twitter or whatever, go for it, man. So really with Dallas, all we're doing is we're seeing if Derek Lively can be a day one impact guy, and then after that, we're just seeing if they can sort of find a center on the cheap. I mean, they released JaVale McGee today, and he was their hope for that type of a guy, and that didn't hit for him like that. For what it's worth, Rashawn Holmes should be cool. Yeah, you would want more rim protection, but you take what you can get, right? All right, now we go to Denver. Is that Reggie Bullock? I like this one. Reggie Bullock, Jayshawn Tatum, Mo Bamba. We're getting rid of all the Spurs shooters, apparently, between Doug McDermott and Reggie Bullock, huh? Yeah, I mean, like, this is pretty much all Denver needs. They just need vets who can give them, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes a game or whatever. Like, as long as you acknowledge that whoever you could probably get is not going to be Bruce Brown, who you can run, like, pick and rolls with like that, which is what they were doing with Bruce last year, on top of, like, just all the things he does as a defender, screen setter, cutter, and all that. All right, now we go to the Pistons. Draft picks, Josh Green and Jalen Johnson. They're not getting any of these guys. I mean, they could possibly get picks. Like, I think if they didn't get Joe Harris, my answer to this would have been, yeah, man, they really need one more shooter. But getting one knockdown guy to go along with Boyan, it's like, okay. I will also say this. I do think that Killian Hayes' spot on this team, it's starting to look a little interesting after picking up Monte Morris. And I'm not saying that Killian's going to be out of the rotation or anything, but he better be good next season. I mean, look, he had nearly triple assists to turnovers last year. So he certainly got NBA skills. It's just, you just got to start making shots efficiently. And we're going OG for the Warriors. OG, Caleb Martin, and Alec Burks. I mean, the thing with the Warriors is that they've already got protected picks going out. So they're not really in a state to just start trading away picks unless they wanted to trade stuff in the later part of this decade. The one thing I will say about a potential OG thing, like, obviously defensively for the Warriors, that'd be great. I do think offensively with their read and react system, I mean, they've already said it can be an adjustment period for guys. Like, I'm sure OG could, finish plays and catch and shoot within that. But in terms of making those quick decision plays and then whatever, it'd be like run a handoff with somebody, set a screen, whatever. Like, would that be a natural fit for him right away? I don't know. Okay, who do they have for Houston? We have Alex Caruso, DeLon Wright, and OG Anunoby. I would love to know what teams would be willing to offer for Caruso, especially because his contract is such a bargain. I mean, it's $9 million per season the next 2 years. But I would imagine the Bulls want to hang on to him. As for the Rockets, I mean, yes, I think Ime Udoka would love to add one more defensive player to this group. And as we know, they were willing to give a whole bunch of money to Brook Lopez before he went back to the Bucks. Because Fred's going to play hard against opposing guards. Dylan Brooks is tough on the ball. Jabari's already shown good stuff as a team defender. I think Amen's defensive potential is kind of insane, given that he's an insane athlete, of course. As far as putting a move together, well, that gets a little tough because most of the guys on this team are like an exciting young player, or it's a veteran they just give a bunch of money to. And of course, they should not be trading draft picks. So, I don't know. I mean, I know KPJ has been a popular sort of like, well, what's going to happen with him now because they got Fred and they drafted Amen and all that. I mean, KPJ's talented. He's definitely still got a spot on the team, if you ask me. Now we go to the Pacers. They were, if not rumored, then there was like some speculation on Siakam as well. Yeah, the thing with the Pacers is because they have all of their future firsts, I think they, if they really, really wanted to, could get into a star player type of trade. But my gut feeling with them is they probably want to hold on to their picks. They want to develop Mathurin and Jarris Walker and unleash Obi Toppin on a new team with a bigger role and all that, and let Halliburton create for everybody. And Miles Turner can continue being awesome, and they're just going to kind of ride it out that way. But if they wanted to go crazy, they technically could. They do have the assets. So yeah, now we go to the Clippers. They got James Harden, Malcolm Brogdon, and Terry Rozier. I mean, with the Harden stuff, I mean, we just got to push to the side for right now, to be honest with you, man. Brogdon, I don't think the Celtics want to move him. Rozier, that's an interesting name. The biggest takeaway here is like, yes, of course the Clippers would want a guard. I mean, they almost got Brogdon before they were like, wait a minute, what's up with the physicals? Okay, we're not comfortable with this. The thing with the Clippers, though, and I've said this before, like, they do have their own picks when you get to like the midpoint of this decade. I just don't think they're going to trade any of them, man. Like, I just think they're going to tell themselves, we just can't do it unless like an insane deal comes our way. So I think what you're going to see is more Terrence Mann handling the ball and all that. And right, now we go to the Lakers. Boyan, Cole Anthony, or Colin Sexton. I think the big question with the Lakers, honestly, is just how much would teams covet what the Lakers can offer? I mean, D'Lo waived his no-trade clause, so okay, he's tradable this season. Do I think a D'Lo for another player, just one-to-one swap, is going to get the Lakers exactly who they might want? Probably not, to be honest. Of course, I can be wrong, and I have been many times. Do I think the Lakers would really want to include future pick protections? Would they want to include like Max Christie or Hood Schifino in a trade? Also, probably not. This is called negotiations, of course. But specifically for Bojan, look, Bojan's massive for the Pistons, especially with Cade entering year 3, and I think there being more of a hope for, getting the win total up this year. You need his shooting, right? And so if they were going to trade him, I don't think it would be for just anything. But for what it's worth, like they did have conversations with Dallas like 2 months ago about him. So, okay, like they at least listened to teams a little bit. And in that move, they would have taken back Tim Hardaway Jr., as in they would have got a worse player, but still someone who can shoot. So that's probably their mindset of, if we're going to trade this dude, we want a shooter back on top of something else, probably like second rounders. And we're totally fine with keeping him, which I think is fine. Okay, now we get to the Grizzlies. Mikal Bridges, OG Anunoby, and Jeremy Grant. I mean, Mikal to me is just not getting traded. I think the Nets just hang on to him long term, and that's A-okay. Anunoby, I mean, yeah, if you can move multiple picks for Anunoby, I mean, they're already out some picks from the Marcus Smart trade, but if you can move multiple picks for Anunoby, and then you have, I mean, Jaren as a help defender / plays center, be rim protector, or if he's the help guy, you got Steven Adams out there with you, Desmond Baines, of course, tough, Marcus Smart, and then adding OG being the lockdown wing guy, like, yeah, that's a scary defense. So really it just comes down to, well, Grizzlies, just how many picks you want to move. This also means you got to try to predict what the Raptors are going to do, and that's a whole thing in itself. Now we go to Miami, so I imagine they're going to have the Dame thing in there. Yeah, Dame, PG or Siakam. I mean, PG or Siakam, that would shock me if Miami ended up with one of those guys. I'm not really going to predict that. As far as the Dame stuff, I mean, I don't know. There just doesn't seem to be a lot of traction between the Blazers and the Heat like that, man. Even if we all know what Dame wants. Look, for Miami, moving on from like the Dame stuff for a second, I do think getting a point guard, even if it's not Damian Lillard, of course, would be huge for him. I mean, Lowry's a year older, Gabe Vincent's out. And I do think Miami has proven at this point that they can handle taking on not as great defenders, and they can still be a really good defense because of Spo and the help defense and Bam, who can just do anything defensively pretty much, switch, protect the basket, all of it. To call back to a previous name, I also think Miami would be a pretty damn good spot for Dorian Finney-Smith if they could manage that one. Now the Bucks, this might be the most niche one of the entire thing. Alec Burks, TJ McConnell, or Jalen Suggs. Yeah, I mean, look, I said in my Bucks video recently, I think the Bucks, they just need one more guy who is just a good overall offensive player. I know that sounds kind of general, but like someone who can make a shot, who can handle some pick and roll themselves, take a little bit of ball handling pressure off everybody else. And they've got Jalen Suggs mentioned here. And I mean, I don't think Orlando's in the business of shopping Jalen Suggs. I think they're holding on to him. But that type of player, like a defense-first guy where the offense is a little more of a process, we could put it like that, I don't think the Bucks need that type of guy. But the problem for them is that they just don't have a whole lot of assets to really put together. Okay, for the T-Wolves, we have Cole Anthony, Royce O'Neal, and Nicholas Batum. Yeah, I'm going to be honest, man, with the Wolves, I think their roster is pretty much what it's going to be. It's just a matter of making it work now. Defensively, even as it was awkward on offense, Gobert and Cat together still had a great defensive rating, when Cat was out there, changed point guards midway through the season. I mean, sure, like you could always use another solid two-way wing or whatever, but between the assets they gave up for Gobert and everything, like they've pretty much got their team, man. In fact, I would say two of their guys, like Jaden McDaniels and Kyle Anderson, those are the type of guys that everybody else would love to have. So, like Minnesota, again, they got their team. And Naz Reid, who's just a talent off the bench, can attack off the catch as a big and all that. Okay, now we get to the Pelicans. We have a picture of Jared Allen. I did not expect that. Jared Allen, Miles Turner, or Kelly Olynyk. Okay, so I don't think Jared Allen's getting moved. I know there's some discussion about, will they have to do that? I don't think that's happening. And if it was up to me, I think you stick with the Mobley, Jared Allen front court, but this is about the Pelicans. Oh, and also, I don't think Miles Turner is getting moved. But as for the whole, should the Pelicans move off of Valanciunas thing? Well, this previous season when Valanciunas was on the court, they were about a mid-tier defense. Granted, when he was off the court, they were better defensively, but still, they weren't horrible when he was on the court. And when you take that with what he does on offense, which is mostly just be a really physical, around-the-basket scorer who occasionally will shoot a jump shot, I think he's cool for them. Are there better centers out there? Yeah, of course there are. But you could certainly be doing worse than Valanciunas. Okay, now we have the Knicks. Joel Embiid, Zion, and Paul George. Okay, so I do imagine that if Joel ends up asking out, which many things need to not go in Philly's way first, and I've said this before, I do think Joel wants to do it in Philly. But yeah, obviously the Knicks are hoping for the doomsday scenario for the Sixers, and if that's the case, I'm sure they're going to pounce on it and offer up whatever the hell they can offer up. If I can move away from that and just look at their roster, like if the Knicks could get like a 3/4, potentially like even /5 off the bench for some extra versatility, that would be cool. But even then, we know that Tibbs doesn't get super out there with his rotations. The other thing I do want to talk about with the Knicks, though, real quick, is like the Emmanuel Quickley contract situation. Like they still have not agreed to an extension, and I'm just kind of like, okay, so what are we doing here? I do remember, like, as he was making his Sixth Man of the Year case, playing awesome team defense and making tough shots and everything. The conversation pretty much was like, will his contract exceed $1 million or $100 million total? So like a 25 for 4, you know what I'm trying to say. And then he had a really rough playoff performance, and now it's just, I don't even know, man. All right, now we go to OKC. We're doing the Brandon Ingram thing again. Why does Bleacher Report want to trade Brandon Ingram, man? Brandon Ingram's great. Mid-range god, got better with his passing and all that. I'm not seeing it, man. I mean, as far as like what OKC needs to do next, like I know it's not the exciting answer, but I honestly think it's just internal improvement. And then if something kind of falls in your lap, you go for it. But maybe that's me just playing it too safe with them. I mean, yeah, if you want to, you can think of them for any star just because of the amount of picks they have. I guess another question I have for OKC is like, okay, so Chet's going to be the rim protector. J-Dub is a good help defender. Lou Dort, tough on ball. Case and Wallace, tough on ball, all that stuff. I do wonder if it'd be possible for them to get another help defender and just make themselves like kind of terrifying at the rim. I mean, if they could do that while not losing any shooting, that would be pretty massive. I mean, you could say that for every team, to be fair. Okay, now for Orlando, we have Anthony Simons, Sexton, or D'Lo. So they're leaning all the way into the backcourt, which, like, yeah, I think that's the fair conversation to have about Orlando long term. Because I mean, front court wise, they're rock solid. It's Franz, Paulo, and Wendell. I like Fultz for the team. Okay, stable ball handler, gets cooking with the mid range pull up sometimes. Cole Anthony gives him scoring off the bench. I've said enough nice things about Anthony Black's, IQ, passing, and defense. We'll see with the shot. And if you're going to sell any Jalen Suggs stock, I will gladly take it. He did make some jumps with his 3-ball. He's still below average, but he got better in year 2. At some point, they're going to have to make a decision to pivot one way or the other. I don't think they have to do it right now, especially because they should not be moving draft picks, given that they're still a pretty young team. All right, now we get to Philly. So they went kind of crazy with it. They went with Dame, Zach LaVine, or Buddy Hield. Look, we know the Harden situation, all that stuff. To me, the ideal type of player that Philly could add, and one that is a little more realistic than just insert star player, would be an all-around wing who can allow PJ Tucker to come off the bench. I mean, we appreciate what PJ Tucker still does at this point in his career, his age and everything. But ideally, he's coming off the bench for a forward who can still guard, but also can make shots, handle the ball themselves. Basically the type of guy every team would love to have, right? In the grand scheme of things, is not the most important thing within the Sixers right now. I get it. For the Suns, we're going Nick Batum, Joe Ingles, Jae'Sean Tate. I would like Nick Batum on the Suns. I think the Clippers also like Nick Batum on their team, so I don't know if that's really a possibility. But yeah, that would go well. Joe Ingles, who's on the Magic, that would also go well for Phoenix. I feel like the Suns might be just the most straightforward team to do this for, where it's just like, yeah, any good affordable player you can find, just, yeah, totally. Now we get to the Trailblazers, and they just put, picks, Dyson Daniels, Wiseman. Yeah, given the Dame stuff, it's tough to project forward with the Blazers. I will just say this much. If they could find a young, athletic lob threat to screen for Scoot, Shaden, and Simons, that'd be cool. Nothing against Nurkic, but you're going to want somebody else there long term. Now we go to Sacktown. They got Josh Green. Bleacher Report's traded Josh Green a few times, but I don't think Dallas is moving Josh Green. We got Dorian Finney-Smith and Alex Caruso. Yeah, I mean, to me, the Kings, they just need more defensive players, which does get a little awkward because it's like you want to add defensive players who can still do something on offense, of course, without messing up what you had last season. And so that'll be a balancing act, and that all just depends on what ends up presenting itself to them. And as far as their pick situation, I mean, they've got a lottery-protected first going to the Hawks this year, so they can't really go crazy with trading first because it's got like 3 years of protections on it. The big thing, which I think they need, is like a really tall 4 who can be like a help guy next to Sabonis, but also still give you stuff on offense. And those types of guys, they're very difficult to find. And even then, in the meantime, Harrison Barnes is still good. Okay, now we go to the Spurs. We have a picture of Tyler Hero. It's Hero, Ben Simmons, or Tyus Jones. Yeah, I mean, I feel like Miami's only going to trade Hero if it gets him Dame. Now, they do mention Tyus Jones, and Yeah, I mean, that would be the other thing is like, will the Spurs look for the upgrade at point guard going from Trey Jones to somebody else? If it was actually his brother, that'd be kind of wild. I mean, sure, look, I like Trey Jones. I think he's definitely the type of point guard who can keep your offense running steady and all that. But if you want to get somebody who's more dynamic, more of a pull up guy, okay, that option's certainly going to be out there for you. Okay, now we get to the Raptors. We got draft picks, Jalen Suggs, and Ayo Dosunmu. Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of weird projecting the Raptors moving forward here, man, because they're most likely not going to have their pick next season because the pick they traded for Pirtle was lightly protected. So based on that, it's like, well, wouldn't you want to try to be the best you possibly can be? You can try. And, I've already talked about how Darko could potentially bring more of a flow and a movement to the offense and feature Scotty Barnes more of the whole thing. Cool. Even if Siakam is definitely going to still get his shots up and all that. But while we can acknowledge that Fred had a rough season for him, he was also their best option at point guard. Okay, now we get Utah. The Jazz have been like a somewhat popular team to bring up for Dame. I don't think it's going to happen. The Hero or Anunoby stuff, I mean, that's a little more interesting, I think, with the Jazz. Their front court, they've got many front court guys. I think it's safe to say Markkanen and Kessler are your keepers there. Clarkson's good for him right now in the backcourt. Keontae George is the hope long term there. And then along the way, Taylor Hendricks is trying to find minutes in that big old front court thing going on. And then also you got Abaji. I mean, getting somebody honestly like how Mike Conley was for them last year is probably like just the next easy thing to find, just like that stable veteran type of point guard. And now finally the Wizards, they've got draft picks Kuminga and Patrick Williams. Yeah, I can't really imagine that Kuminga would be available. If he was, many teams would be lining up for him, but moving beyond Kuminga and a similar thing with Patrick Williams, I think he's going to be on the Bulls for a while here. Any sort of young dude that you can just, for whatever reason, get, and it doesn't take too much, like, yeah, just go for it if you're the Wizards. You'll be fine.